The Alpha King was crossing the parking lot when he saw a man's fist connect with the jaw of a visibly pregnant woman, her body folding sideways into the door of a sedan. Before anyone else even registered what had happened, the King was already moving, 240 pounds of controlled fury closing the distance in 4 devastating strides. What happened in the next 7 minutes would become the neighborhood's legend, a story whispered about for decades. The man's fist caught her square across the mouth, and she stumbled backward into the parking lot gravel, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other breaking her fall against the hood of a rusted Dodge. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her upright before she could even cry out, his knuckles already cocked back for a second shot. What happened in the next 4 minutes would become legend in a small town outside Houston, a story whispered about for decades, the night a man they called the Alpha King walked out of a barbecue joint and changed 2 lives forever. Let me set this up real quick, because you need to know who was watching. Marcus Delane was 6'4", 260 pounds of muscle packed onto a frame that moved with a calm most people mistake for slowness. He'd been a Golden Gloves champion at 17, turned pro at 20, fought his way to a regional heavyweight title by 23, and then walked away from the ring after his 30th fight because, in his words, he didn't want to hurt anyone who hadn't earned it. By the time this night happened, Marcus was 36 years old, ran a youth boxing gym on the east side of Beaumont, and had a reputation that preceded him into every room he entered. People didn't call him the Alpha King because he demanded it. They called him that because every man who'd ever tested him regretted it, and every kid who'd ever trained under him became something better. He was walking out of Big Jim's smokehouse with a to-go bag of brisket in his left hand when he heard the sound. A crack. Not a car backfiring, not a branch snapping. The sound of knuckles meeting a human face. He turned his head toward the far end of the parking lot and saw the whole ugly picture in under 2 seconds. A woman, visibly pregnant, 7, maybe 8 months along, on her knees in the gravel. A man standing over her with his chest puffed out and his right hand open, fingers spread, getting ready to slap instead of punch this time, like that made it better. Marcus set the brisket bag on the hood of his truck. He didn't rush, he walked. Believe me, the walk was the scariest part. The man hitting the woman was named Dale Royce. 31 years old, built stocky, about 5'10", with a buzz cut and a mechanic's tan that stopped at his t-shirt sleeves. He worked at an auto body shop off Route 69 and had a rap sheet that read like a highlight reel of bad decisions. 2 DUIs. An assault charge that got plea bargained down. A restraining order from a previous girlfriend that he'd violated twice without consequence. Dale was the kind of man who confused fear with respect, and because nobody in his circle had ever drawn a hard line, he'd spent his whole adult life believing the two were the same thing. The woman on the ground was Janelle, 27, 8 months pregnant. She'd been with Dale for a little over a year, and the relationship had started the way these things always do, with charm and promises and a version of Dale that probably never existed outside the first 3 months. By the time the first bruise appeared, she was already pregnant and already isolated from her family 2 states away. Here's what nobody tells you about situations like this. Most people see violence in a parking lot, and they do one of 3 things. They freeze, they pull out a phone, or they look away and walk faster. The 3 other customers leaving Big Jim's that night did exactly that. One guy stopped at his car door and stared. A couple speed-walked to their SUV without looking back. Nobody moved toward the danger. Marcus moved toward the danger. His boots crunched gravel with every step. 30 feet away, 20, 15. Dale hadn't noticed him yet because Dale was too busy standing over Janelle, jabbing a finger in her face, telling her to get up, calling her names I won't repeat on this channel. Janelle was trying to stand, but her center of gravity was all wrong with the baby, and every time she got one knee up, Dale would shove her shoulder and she'd go back down. 10 feet away, Marcus stopped. He planted his feet shoulder-width apart and squared his body to Dale the way you'd square up to a heavy bag. Not aggressive, just ready. He didn't say a word. He just stood there and let his shadow fall across Dale's back in the parking lot lights. Dale felt it before he saw it. That prickle on the back of your neck when someone large is standing behind you. He spun around, and whatever tough guy script he had running in his head hit a wall the moment he looked up. And I mean up. Marcus had 4 inches and at least 60 pounds on this man. Dale's eyes went wide for half a second before he caught himself and puffed his chest back out. "Mind your business," Dale said. Marcus didn't answer. He looked past Dale, down at Janelle on the ground. He extended his left hand toward her, palm open, steady. "Ma'am, can you stand?" Janelle looked at the hand, then at Dale, then back at the hand. She reached for it. Dale slapped it away. Get this. Dale actually slapped Marcus Delane's hand away. The hand of a man who had once knocked a 240-pound professional fighter unconscious in the second round of a title fight. Dale slapped that hand like he was swatting a fly. Marcus pulled his hand back slowly. He looked at his own palm for a moment, then looked at Dale. Not with anger. Something worse. Patience. The kind of patience that says, "I've already decided how this ends, and I'm giving you one last chance to change the outcome." "I'm going to ask you to step back," Marcus said. His voice was low, almost conversational. "I'm going to help her up, and then you and I are going to have a talk." "I don't know who you think you are," Dale said, stepping closer, getting in Marcus's space, chin tilted up. "But this is between me and my girl. She's carrying my kid. This ain't your concern." Marcus's jaw tightened. Just a fraction. If you weren't watching for it, you'd miss it completely. But that tightening was the equivalent of a normal man screaming. It meant the leash was getting shorter. "You hit a pregnant woman," Marcus said. "That makes it everybody's concern." Dale made his next mistake. He shoved Marcus in the chest with both hands. "Now, I want you to picture this. Imagine pushing a parked truck. That's what happened." Marcus didn't move. His feet didn't slide. His upper body didn't rock back. He absorbed the shove the way concrete absorbs rain. Dale's hands bounced off Marcus's chest, and Dale stumbled backward from his own momentum. "I swear this happened." Dale stumbled from pushing someone else. That's how solid Marcus was. For a moment, Dale's face showed exactly what he was feeling. Confusion. Then something worse than confusion. Recognition. The slow, cold understanding that he'd just put his hands on someone who operated in a completely different weight class of human being. But Dale had spent his whole life doubling down instead of backing down, and this night was no different. He swung. A wild right hook aimed at Marcus's jaw, the kind of punch a bar fighter throws when he's running on adrenaline and ego. Marcus saw it coming from the moment Dale's shoulder rotated. He slipped his head to the left, and Dale's fist sailed past his ear, hitting nothing but Texas air. Dale's momentum carried him forward, off balance, and Marcus did something that surprised everyone watching. He caught Dale, literally caught him, wrapped one massive arm around Dale's torso and steadied him on his feet, like a parent catching a toddler who tripped on a curb. Then Marcus let him go and stepped back. "That's one," Marcus said. "You get one. Trust me when I tell you that sentence carried more weight than a punch ever could." Dale stood there breathing hard, fists still clenched, trying to process the fact that he'd just thrown his best shot at a man who not only dodged it, but caught him on the way through and then let him try again. But here's the thing about Dale Royce. He wasn't smart enough to read the room. Or maybe he was too proud. Or maybe he was too used to being the scariest person in any given situation. Whatever the reason, he didn't take the exit Marcus was offering him. "You don't know who you're messing with," Dale said. Marcus took a single step forward. Not a lunge, not a rush, one step. And Dale flinched. His whole body jerked backward involuntarily, like he'd touched a hot stove. Every ounce of tough guy posture evaporated in that flinch, and they both knew it. Marcus had just proven something without throwing a single punch. He'd proven that Dale was afraid of him, and more importantly, that Dale knew he should be. Now you need to understand something about this moment. Marcus could have ended this in a dozen different ways. He had the skill, the size, and frankly, the justification. A man beating a pregnant woman in a parking lot. No jury in Texas would have blamed Marcus for putting Dale in the hospital. But Marcus didn't want to put Dale in the hospital. He wanted something harder than that. He wanted Dale to stop. Not just tonight, not just in this parking lot. He wanted Dale to understand, in his bones, in his marrow, that what he'd been doing was over, and you don't achieve that with a knockout. A knockout makes you a victim in your own story. Marcus knew that. He'd seen it 100 times. You beat a man up, and he tells himself he got jumped, got sucker-punched, got caught on a bad night. He never faces what he did. He just adds a grudge to his list. So Marcus chose the harder path. And what follows next is why people still talk about this night. Marcus turned his back on Dale, deliberately. He turned away from a hostile, aggressive man and walked over to Janelle. He knelt down beside her in the gravel, one knee on the ground, and he brought his face level with hers. She had a split lip and gravel embedded in her right palm. Tears were cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "What's your name?" he asked. "Janelle," she whispered. "Janelle, I'm Marcus. Are you hurting anywhere besides your mouth?" She shook her head. Then she winced and put her hand on the underside of her belly. "The baby's been kicking hard since I fell." "That's good," Marcus said. "Baby's telling you it's okay in there. Can I help you up?" She nodded. Marcus stood, took both her hands gently, and lifted her to her feet with the kind of care you'd use handling something irreplaceable. He walked her 3 steps to the side and positioned himself between her and Dale. Now she was behind him, shielded by 260 pounds of trained fighter. Dale hadn't moved. He was standing in the same spot, fists still balled, face twisted up in that particular expression men wear when they've lost control of a situation they thought they owned. His eyes were jumping between Marcus and Janelle, calculating, running scenarios. "Janelle," Dale said, his voice dropping into that low, controlled tone that abusers use when they switch from rage to manipulation. "Get over here. We're going home." Janelle took a half step forward out of pure reflex. Years of conditioning, years of obeying that voice. Marcus felt her move behind him and shifted his body slightly, not blocking her, just reminding her she had a wall between her and the storm. "You don't have to go anywhere," Marcus said over his shoulder, keeping his eyes on Dale. "You have a choice right now. And right there, is the moment this story pivots. Because Janelle made a choice. She stopped. She planted her feet. She stayed behind Marcus. And Dale saw it happen. Now here's what's wild. Dale's face changed, not to anger, not to rage, to something I didn't expect when I first heard this story. Panic. Pure, desperate panic. Because Dale Royce was not a man who hit women because he was strong. He was a man who hit women because he was terrified of being alone, terrified of losing control, terrified that without fear as a tool, he had nothing to offer. And in this parking lot, in front of Big Jim's smokehouse, a stranger had just given his girlfriend the one thing Dale had spent a year taking from her, a choice. "Janelle, I swear to God." Dale started. Marcus cut him off. "You're done talking to her tonight. She's having my baby, and you just hit her in the mouth while she's carrying that baby. So right now, tonight, you're done." Dale's nostrils flared. His eyes went glassy. And then, I kid you not, the man started crying, not sobbing, not breaking down, just tears leaking out of his eyes while his jaw stayed clenched and his fists stayed tight. It was the ugliest kind of crying, the kind that comes from a man who hates himself but doesn't know how to stop being what he is. Marcus watched this happen, and here's where the Alpha King showed why people gave him that name. It wasn't the fighting. It was never the fighting. It was what he did next. He took a step toward Dale. Dale flinched again, harder this time, and threw his hands up to cover his face. Marcus stopped. He unclenched his own hands and held them palms out at his sides. "Put your hands down," Marcus said. Dale slowly lowered his hands. His face was a mess. Tears, snot, red blotches. He looked like a man who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just felt the first crack in his arms. "I know what you are," Marcus said. "Because I've seen it before. I've trained boys who grew up watching their dads do exactly what you just did. And those boys had 2 paths. They either became you, or they decided not to. You're standing in the middle of that fork right now." Dale didn't respond. His chest was heaving. His fists finally uncurled, and his fingers hung loose at his sides. "I'm not going to hit you," Marcus said. "Not because you don't deserve it. You do. But because putting you on the ground won't change what you do when you get back up. You need to decide what kind of man stands back up." The parking lot was dead quiet. The guy who'd been staring from his car door was still there, frozen. A car on Route 69 hummed past without stopping. The sign for Big Jim's buzzed and flickered overhead, casting orange light across the gravel. Dale wiped his face with the back of his hand. He looked at Janelle behind Marcus. He looked at Marcus. He looked at his own hands, the same hands that had split his pregnant girlfriend's lip 3 minutes earlier. "I don't know how to stop," Dale said. His voice cracked on the last word, not for sympathy, not for show. It cracked because it was the truest thing he'd ever said out loud. "And listen, here's the part that separates Marcus from every other tough guy in every other parking lot." He didn't mock Dale for that. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't say, "That's not my problem." He nodded, one slow nod. Because Marcus had spent 15 years working with young men who came from violence and were terrified they'd become it. And he recognized the sound of a man reaching the edge of his own self-destruction. "I know you don't," Marcus said. "That's why you're going to get help. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now." Marcus reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out a card. It was for a counseling center in Beaumont that specialized in anger management and domestic violence intervention. He'd been handing these cards out for years. He kept a stack of them in his gym, his truck, his wallet. He held the card out to Dale. Dale stared at it like it was a live grenade. "Take it," Marcus said, "or I call the police and they take you. Those are your 2 options tonight. There's no third door. Let me be real with you." This wasn't a bluff. Marcus had already made up his mind that Dale was not leaving this parking lot without either a card or handcuffs, but he was giving Dale the dignity of choosing. That's the part that mattered. Dale reached out and took the card. His hand was shaking. He looked at it, front and back, then shoved it in his pocket. "Now," Marcus said, "you're going to get in your truck, and you're going to drive somewhere that is not wherever Janelle is staying tonight. You're going to call that number in the morning, and if I hear that you've touched her again, I promise you something." Marcus paused. He let the silence do the work. "Next time, I won't talk." 5 words at the end there. Quiet. No shouting, no chest pounding. The way a man speaks when he's telling you the weather forecast and the forecast is a hurricane aimed directly at your house. Dale looked at Marcus one more time. Whatever he saw in those eyes, whatever calculation he ran, whatever survival instinct finally kicked in past the ego and the rage and the years of being the biggest bully in every room, it was enough. He turned. He walked to his truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 with a cracked taillight and a faded bumper sticker. He got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Marcus watched the taillights until they disappeared down Route 69. Then he turned to Janelle. She was shaking, not from cold, from the adrenaline dump, from the fear, from the sudden absence of the thing she'd been bracing against for months. Her arms were wrapped around her belly and her teeth were chattering even though it was 78 degrees outside. Marcus took off his jacket, a worn brown Carhartt that smelled like barbecue smoke and gym chalk, and draped it over her shoulders. "You got somewhere safe to go tonight?" She shook her head. "Family?" "My sister's in Louisiana. We haven't talked in a while." "How long is a while?" "Since I started dating Dale." He didn't want me talking to her. Marcus pulled out his phone. "What's her number?" Janelle hesitated. Then she recited it from memory. "Some numbers you don't forget, no matter how long it's been." Marcus dialed, put it on speaker, and held the phone out. It rang 3 times. A woman's voice picked up, groggy, confused. "Hello? Lisa?" Janelle's voice broke on the name. Silence on the other end. "Then Janelle?" "Oh my God. Janelle, is that you?" What happened next was something Marcus stepped away from. He gave them space. He walked back to his truck, picked up his brisket bag from the hood, leaned against the driver's door, and let two sisters reconnect after a year of enforced silence. He could hear fragments, crying, apologies, questions, the sound of a bridge being rebuilt in real time across a cell phone connection. After about 10 minutes, Janelle walked over to him. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but something in her face had shifted. The hunted look was gone. Not replaced by happiness, not yet, but by something that might eventually grow into it. Determination. The set jaw of a woman who'd just made the second hard choice of the night. "Lisa's driving down tonight," Janelle said. "She'll be here by morning." Marcus nodded.
"You need a place to wait?"
"I can't go back to the apartment. My sister runs a women's shelter off Highway 90. I'll drive you there. They'll take care of you until Lisa arrives." Janelle looked at Marcus for a long moment. "Why did you stop? Nobody ever stops. This is the thing right here. This is what separates a good man from a man who merely avoids being bad." Marcus didn't have to stop. He had brisket. He had a truck. He had a warm evening and no obligation to anyone in that parking lot. But he stopped because he'd built his entire life around a single principle. Strength without purpose is just weight. "Because I could," Marcus said. That was it. 3 words. No speech. No philosophy. Because I could. He drove Janelle to the shelter. His sister, a woman named Denise, who'd been running the place for 11 years, met them at the door with a blanket and a cup of tea, and the quiet efficiency of someone who'd welcomed 1,000 Janelles through that door at all hours of the night. Marcus carried Janelle's bag, which was just her purse with a cracked phone and $42 in it, and set it inside the front room. Before he left, Janelle grabbed his arm. "The baby," she said. "If it's a boy, I want to name him Marcus." He didn't say anything for a second. His eyes got bright. His throat moved like he was swallowing something heavy. Then he reached into his jacket, the one still draped over her shoulders, and pulled out a business card for his gym. "When that baby's old enough, boy or girl, you bring them to my gym. I'll teach them how to be strong the right way." And that was it. He left, got back in his truck, drove home, ate his brisket, which was cold by then, went to bed. But the story didn't end there. Here's what happened after. Janelle's sister Lisa arrived at 6 the next morning. By noon, Janelle had filed a police report. By the end of the week, she had a protective order. She moved to Louisiana with Lisa and started over. The baby, a boy, was born 6 weeks later. She named him Marcus James. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy, loud, perfect. Now here's the part about Dale that nobody expected. He called the number on that card, not the next morning, 3 days later. But he called. He started counseling twice a week, for months. Now, I'm not standing here telling you Dale Royce became a saint. He didn't. Recovery from being an abusive person is not a movie montage. It's ugly and slow and full of backsliding. But Dale stayed in the program. He showed up to court. He accepted the protective order without contesting it. And 18 months later, his counselor told a mutual acquaintance something that got back to Marcus. Dale had said in a session that the thing that changed him wasn't the fear of getting hit. It was the fact that Marcus could have destroyed him and chose not to. That Marcus had seen him at his absolute worst and still handed him a card instead of a fist. Dale said he'd spent his whole life believing that power meant making people afraid. And in 4 minutes in a parking lot, a stranger had shown him that real power was the opposite. Real power was having every reason to crush someone and choosing to lift someone else up instead. I want you to sit with that for a second. Now, if you're watching this and this story hit you somewhere, if it reminded you of someone you know or someone you were or someone you're trying to become, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button. Not for the algorithm. Not for me. Because the stories on this channel are about people who chose to be more than what the world expected, and if that matters to you, you should be here for the next one. That's it. That's my ask. Now, let me finish this. 2 years after that night in the parking lot, Marcus was at his gym on a Saturday morning running drills with his youth team. 12 kids, ages 8 to 15, working the bags, jumping rope, learning footwork. The gym was loud with the sound of gloves hitting pads and kids talking trash to each other the way kids do when they're learning to be brave in a safe place. The front door opened. Marcus looked up from where he was adjusting a kid's stance. A woman walked in, holding a toddler on her hip. The boy had big brown eyes and a head full of curly hair, and he was chewing on the ear of a stuffed dinosaur. Behind the woman holding the door open was an older woman Marcus recognized as Lisa from the voice on the phone that night. Janelle looked different, not just physically, though the split lip was long-heeled and she carried herself with her shoulders back instead of hunched forward. She looked like a person who'd come back from somewhere dark and found out there was still sunlight waiting. She walked across the gym floor, past the speed bags and the ring, and stood in front of Marcus. She turned the toddler to face him. "Marcus," she said to the boy, "this is the man you're named after." The toddler looked at Marcus with the blank, beautiful curiosity that only small children have. Then he held out the stuffed dinosaur, offering it the way kids offer their most prized possession to someone they've decided to trust for no logical reason. Marcus took the dinosaur. He looked at it. He looked at the boy. He looked at Janelle. And the Alpha King, a man who'd faced down fighters twice as mean and 3 times as desperate as Dale Royce, the man who'd never once flinched in a ring or a parking lot, pressed his lips together hard and blinked 3 times in a row. He handed the dinosaur back. "He's got a good grip," Marcus said. "He'll be a southpaw." Janelle laughed. It was the first time Marcus had heard her laugh, and it sounded like someone opening a window in a room that had been closed for too long. She brought little Marcus to the gym once a month after that, then twice a month. By the time the boy was 4, he was wearing tiny boxing gloves and learning how to stand with his feet shoulder-width apart, chin tucked, hands up. Not to fight, to be ready, to know that his body was his own and nobody had the right to use it against him. Marcus Delane never talked about that night publicly. He never posted about it, never gave an interview. The story spread the way real stories spread, from mouth to mouth. From the guy at the car door who finally stopped freezing and started telling people what he saw, to the staff at the shelter who watched the pieces come together, to the counselor who heard Dale's side years later and understood the full picture. People called Marcus the Alpha King because he could fight. But the legend, the real legend, the one that got told and retold at barbershops and gyms and church parking lots across Southeast Texas, wasn't about fighting at all. It was about a man who walked across a parking lot with brisket in one hand and a decision in his heart, and in 4 minutes, without throwing a single punch, saved 2 lives. Janelle's life, because she got out. And Dale's, because for the first time, someone showed him that the cycle could break. That's the story. That's the legend. A man saw something wrong and he walked toward it, not because it was safe, not because it was easy, not because anyone was watching. Because he could.